Hi crochet friends, this is Alicia from Malinka Yarn Crafts. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I design crochet garments, accessories, home decor, and I also share crochet tips and stitch tutorials. Make sure to check out my other videos. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to crochet the Star Anise cover up. I will be making size small medium, but I will give you the multiplier for the stitch pattern so you can adjust the number of chains as needed. You can also find all of the sizes in the written pattern, which is available in a printable PDF version in my Etsy and Ravelry shops. I hope you will enjoy this video, and if you do, don't forget to give it a like, and it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to my channel. In today's project, I'm going to be using the Lion Brand 24/7 Cotton DK yarn. This is a lightweight yarn, so it's a weight 3 yarn. The color that I'm going to be using is Desert Lily. If you want to substitute the yarn, you can use any brand yarn of the same weight. I do recommend that you stick with natural fibers because they are lighter and they breathe better for summer garments. But it is, of course, up to you what yarn you substitute with. The exact amounts you're going to need are going to be posted in the description box below, so make sure to purchase enough yarn for your entire project to ensure that the color is the same across the board. The other thing we're going to need is a 4mm hook, which is the same hook size that is recommended on the yarn label. We're also going to need a yarn needle to sew our panels together, and I will be using stitch markers. They are not necessary, but I do like to use them a lot. I use them to mark the front side, the right side of my work. I use them to pin the panels together before I sew them, and I also use them to count my rows. So I'll mark the 10th row, every 10th row, and this way I don't lose count of my rows. We're also going to need scissors and measuring tape. And another thing that I am going to use, but it is optional. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. I will be using actual blocking mats with pins. I will be blocking my gauge swatch, and then I will be blocking my entire garment at the end as well. So I do recommend blocking anything that is lacy or made with cotton. If you don't have a blocking mat, you can just use a yoga mat, or you can simply stretch out your garment on some thick towels. That will work as well. Okay, so let's get started. In today's tutorial, I will be making size small, medium. So it's one size for both. This will fit a medium with a little bit less ease, approximately 4 to 6 inches, and it'll fit a small with up to 10-inch ease. We are going to work 2 front panels and 1 back panel the exact same way, and I do recommend that you work a swatch with me. However, if you are confident that you can just work the garment without a swatch and you just want to skip that step, you are going to just follow the instructions that I give you while I work my gauge swatch, but you're going to chain the number that you're going to need for your panels. So if you're working the same size, you're going to chain 50 for your front panels. Okay, so we're going to chain 50 instead of the number of chains that I am going to work for my swatch. And then we're going to work a row of single crochets on top of that 50 chains, and you're going to have 49 single crochets. And that is going to be your base where you're going to start your lace stitch pattern. The row of single crochets, as you work it, that is going to be the right side of our work. So I recommend that you mark it either with a stitch marker or with a piece of yarn in contrasting color to mark the right side of your work. So you're going to work 2 front panels, so you're going to chain 50 for both of them. Then you're going to work a back panel in the same pattern, and for this size, the back panel will need 122 chains. And as you work your first row of single crochets, you can go ahead and mark it as well as the right side. and you're going to have 121 stitches in your first row here, and you will need that number of stitches to work your lace pattern on top of it. All right, so we're going to get started with a slip knot, and I am going to chain 26 for my gauge swatch. All right, so I have 26 chains here. For this pattern, we are going to need to chain any multiple of 8 plus 2. In row 1, we're going to start by working a single crochet into the second chain from the hook. And we want to work our single crochets into the back bumps of chains. So you're going to turn your chain and insert your hook into that back bump. It's just going to make the bottom edge of your panels look so much nicer. Okay, so right there into that back bump and finish off your single crochet. So we're going to work a row of single crochets across. So in every single chain working into the back bumps, we're going to work one single crochet. Right there. So at the end of this row, you're going to have a total of 25 single crochets, 25 stitches. After you finish your row 1, make sure to count your stitches. We want to have a multiple of 8 plus 1 at the end of this row. So I have 25 stitches in my gauge swatch. If you're working your own size chain, then you want to make sure that after this row you do have a multiple of 8 plus 1. Now we're going to get started on the actual lace pattern. So row 2 here is going to start with chain 3. So we're going to chain 3 and turn. This chain is going to count as a double crochet. Now we're going to work a double crochet in the same stitch into this very first stitch. So yarn over, go into that very first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so technically we have 2 double crochets right here. Next we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip 3 stitches and single crochet into the next stitch. Okay, so we chained 2, we skip 1, 2, 3, and then go into the next stitch and single crochet. Next we're going to chain 2 again. We're going to skip 3 stitches again and then work a double crochet, chain 3, and double crochet into the next stitch. Okay, so one step at a time. Chain 2, then skip 1, 2, 3, go into the next stitch and work 1 double crochet. So yarn over, work a double crochet, then you're going to chain 3 here and work another double crochet into the same stitch. If you have the written pattern, you can use the chart in the pattern, so it might be easier for some people to use the chart instead of the actual video instructions or the written instructions. So now we're going to repeat this sequence from these 2 chains to this double crochet. Okay, so we're going to chain 2, skip 3 stitches, single crochet, chain 2, skip 3 stitches, and then work 1 double crochet, chain 3, 1 double crochet in the next stitch. Okay, so chain 2, skip 3 stitches, work a single crochet, chain 2, skip 3 stitches, work a double crochet, chain 3, and a double crochet in the same stitch. Okay, So this is a gauge swatch, so we only had to repeat this one more time. If you're doing your panels, you're going to repeat this pattern a few more times, and you're going to repeat it until you have 8 stitches left. So here I already have 8 stitches left, so now we're going to work this these final 8 stitches. So we're going to chain 2, skip 3 stitches, and then single crochet in the next stitch. So repeat part of that sequence. And now we're almost to the end here, and we're going to chain 2, and we're going to work 2 double crochets in the very last stitch. So we're going to skip 3 stitches and go into the very last stitch of the row right here and work 2 double crochets to finish off row 2. And this is how it's going to look right here at the end of this row. For our next row, we're going to chain 1 and turn. This one chain is not going to count as a stitch here. We're going to start by working 1 single crochet in the very first stitch. So into that first DC, double crochet. Okay, so 1 single crochet in the first stitch. Now we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip this next double crochet and the 2 chains, and we're going to work into the single crochet from the row below. So we're skipping this double crochet, we're skipping 2 chains, and we're going to go into the single crochet right here. Okay, and we're going to work a group of 2 double crochets, 1 chain, and 2 more double crochets. So it's a shell stitch basically. So we're going to yarn over and go straight into that single crochet, work 1 double crochet, second double crochet, we're going to chain 1 here and work 2 more double crochets. Go. Next we're going to chain 2, and we're going to work 1 single crochet into that chain 3 space. So we're skipping again, we're skipping chain 2, we're skipping a double crochet, and we're going to go into the space. So you're going to insert your hook under that chain 3 and work a single crochet. Okay, so now we're going to chain 2 and go into the next single crochet and work that group again of 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets, all into that single crochet from the row below. Okay, so we're repeating this until the end of the row. So we're chaining 2 every time before and after the shell, and then here we're going to work a single crochet into that chain 3 space, chain 2 again, work your shell into the next single crochet from the row below. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. And here we are almost at the end of the row. So what we're going to do here is we're going to chain 2 again, and we're going to work a single crochet in the very last stitch of this row. And the last stitch of this row is actually that turning chain, that chain 3 that we did in the beginning of the previous row. So we're going to work a single crochet into the top of that turning chain. So you're going to find the top chain of the chain 3. Here we go. And work a single crochet to finish off this row. Here we are. So to recap, you're working 1 single crochet in the very first stitch, chain 2, work a shell of 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets into the single crochet from the row below, chain 2, single crochet into the chain 3 space, chain 2, work a shell into the single crochet, and so on until the end of the row. And then at the end you're going to chain 2 and work a single crochet into the top of the turning chain. And we're ready to start on the next row, and row 4 is going to be basically a repeat of row 2, and the difference is that we're no longer working into a row of single crochets, we're working into this row of shell stitches. So we're going to start with chain 3 and turn, and again this chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet. Then we're going to work a double crochet into this very first stitch. So we yarn over, go into that very first stitch again and work a double crochet. So we're starting the row with 2 double crochets and we're going to end the row in 2 double crochets. Now we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip all the stitches in between. So we're going to skip 2 chains and 2 double crochets, and we're going to go straight into that chain 1 space. So we're going to insert our hook under the chain 1 space and work a single crochet. Now we're going to chain 2 again. We're going to skip the 2 double crochets. We're going to skip the chain 2 and go into that single crochet. And in the single crochet, we're going to work the same thing we worked in the row below, 2 rows below, basically in row 2. So 1 double crochet, chain 3, and 1 double crochet. So we're going to skip everything up to that single crochet from the row below, work 1 double, chain 3, and 1 double into the same stitch. Okay, so we're going to repeat the same thing. We're going to chain 2 and work a single crochet in the chain 1 space of the next shell, chain 2, work a double crochet, chain 3 double crochet in the next single crochet, so skipping everything in between, going straight into that single crochet, working 1 double crochet, chain 3, and 1 double crochet. Again, chain 2, skip chain 2 below, skip 2 double crochets, work a single crochet into the chain 1 space from the next shell, chain 2, and here we are almost at the end, so we're going to skip 2 double crochets, we're going to skip the chain 2, and we're going to go into that single crochet we worked in the beginning of the previous row, and we're going to work 2 double crochets into it. So you're going into that very last stitch, that single crochet, and working 2 double crochets. Here we go. So row 4 is finished. And now you can kind of see already the pattern that is forming. And you can see that these lacy stitches will need to be stretched out later on, which is why we want to block it. So now we're going to keep repeating rows 3 and 4 until we have a total of 13 rows. This is what we will need for our gauge swatch. So basically the next row, you're going to repeat row 3. You're going to chain 1 and turn, work 1 single crochet in the first stitch. You're going to chain 2, work 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets in a single crochet, chain 2, then 1 single crochet into the chain 3 space, chain 2, again a shell of 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, and so on. Then you're going to finish in 1 single crochet into the top of the chain 3, and then you're going to repeat this row again and so on until you have a total of 13 rows. And row 13 is going to be a repeat of this row right here, the row with the shells. So this is going to be row 3. So you want to end and repeat of row 3 because it is a flatter row. It doesn't have these waves here. Okay, so go ahead and finish all 13 rows, and then I'll meet you back here. So here I have all 13 rows finished, so I can go ahead and tie off and cut. And my gauge swatch is finished. So now what we want to do is block our gauge swatch. There are different methods of blocking. If you have your preferred method, go ahead and do that. Basically, if you have a steam blocker, you can use that. You can also pin it and spray it with water, or you can just submerge in a little bit of lukewarm water, get it completely wet, and then block it. So this is what I am going to do. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and get it soaked in a little bit of lukewarm water, and then I'm going to block it. Okay, so if you are blocking an entire garment, you're obviously going to want to submerge it in a little bit of soapy water, so a mild detergent or a wool wash. Since this is just a gauge swatch here, I just went ahead and got it completely wet in the sink under the tap with lukewarm water. And then when you block, you want to make sure, if you do a complete submerge, you want to make sure that you don't wring your garment. So you want to just gently squeeze the water out of it. And then you can go ahead and roll it in a towel. And I have a little washcloth here, and you're going to roll and gently press so that the towel soaks up the excess water from your swatch here. Okay, so we're going to roll it up. If it's a big size, full clothing item, you might have to actually step on it or apply pressure with your full arms. Okay, so once that is done, shake it off a little bit, and then I can block it. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin it to my blocking board. Right there. So when you're blocking, it's really up to you how much you want to stretch. So it's up to your personal preference. So you do want to stretch it enough that the stitch is obvious. So your lace stitch is obvious. Right there, it's really showing, but you don't want to overstretch it. So just be careful and make sure you don't overstretch your swatch. You don't really need to pin in this many places. I'm just doing it because this is a small swatch. Okay, so I'm going to do the bottom, then I'm going to go up one side and then another side. And then once you pin all the sides, if you feel like it's too stretched, you can go ahead and repin. So I'm going to pin all 4 sides. I am done pinning all 4 sides, and now you can see what a difference it makes once you block your lacy stitch pattern, especially if it's made in cotton. You can really make out the lace pattern here. You can see the flowers forming, and it's nice and crisp. So I'm going to let this dry overnight. I want it nice and dry, and once it's completely dry, I can accurately measure my gauge swatch. Okay, so my swatch dried out overnight, and now you can see how it's nice and stretched out. The stitches are crisp. You can really see the pattern well, and you can also see the difference between the blocked and the unblocked lacy stitch pattern. So now I can go ahead and measure my swatch. so that I can come up with an accurate gauge. And as you can see, I have exactly 5 inches here in the width, and I have exactly 5 inches here in the length. So this is perfect. I have 5 inches wide and 5 inches long here for my gauge swatch, and that gives me 5 stitches per inch. Okay, so you divide your total stitches by the amount of inches in the width, and you come up with stitches per inch. And then for the length, you're going to do the same for the rows. And I'm only going to count the lacy rows here, and I have 12 rows of lace stitch pattern in 5 inches, and that gives me approximately 2.4 rows per inch. Okay, so if you want to do any adjustments to your pattern, to the width or the length of the garment, you're just going to use your gauge swatch to calculate how many stitches you're going to need for your panels and how many rows you're going to need total to achieve the length that you need. Okay, so hopefully you got some practice working the stitch pattern on this gauge swatch, so now you're ready to work your panels. So we are going to need 2 front panels and 1 back panel. So go ahead and work your panels now. And as I mentioned earlier, for this size, so small, medium, we're going to chain 50 for the front panels, and we're going to chain 122 for the back panel. I worked a total of 79 rows here, and that gave me approximately 32.5 inches. So 1 row of single crochets and then 78 rows in the stitch pattern. And we want to finish in a repeat of row 3 because it's flatter at the top there. And when you finish working your front panels, you want to leave slightly longer tails so that we have a longer tail so we can sew the shoulder seams together later on. And you will not need a longer tail on the back panel because we're going to use the tails from the front panels. If you need to go back and rewatch the video where we work the gauge swatch, you can do that. And then once you're done with your panels, I'm going to meet you back here to proceed with the assembly. After we complete the 2 front panels and the back panel, we're going to start assembling our panels together. And we're going to start at the shoulder seam. So we're going to attach the front panel to the back panel on the right side and also on the left side. You want to make sure that your panels are wrong side facing. So because I did mark my panels, the right side of my panels, I know which sides need to be touching. So the front side of the front panel and the back panel are touching each other, and so the wrong side is out. Okay, so I'm going to start on the right hand side here, and I'm going to use the long tail that I left on the front panel and my yarn needle here. If you don't have that long tail, you can just go ahead and attach a new strand of yarn here. So on the whip stitch, we just go from front to back through the top stitches. So this one's already attached to the front, so I just need to go for the back on that first stitch. And I'm going to go through both loops of every stitch, front to back. And I also make sure that my stitch pattern lines up as I sew the panels together. So as you can see, I am attaching that chain 2 space to the chain 2 space in the back. Then I want to make sure that my double crochets here are lined up as well. So the first double crochet on the front panel to the first double crochet on the back panel. So we want to tighten this up a little bit. You don't want to tighten it too much to where it's wrinkling up, but also not too loose. So just try to tug on it a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so again, this chain one space here, I want to make sure it's lined up with the chain one space on the back panel here, and so on. So we're just going to go ahead and whip stitch all the way up here. So we are lining up our pattern here, and as we come to this very last stitch, our last single crochet here is going to line up with a single crochet right here on the back panel, okay? Right there. Once you finish the right side, you will do the other side as well, so the left side. If you did the same thing as me and left that long tail, you're actually going to have to start from the middle here instead of starting from the end, because this is where the long tail is if your panels are lined up properly, so wrong side out. So you have to make sure that you align your pattern first so that you know where you need to start on the back panel. So you want to make sure that your stitches here line up properly. There we go. Okay, so now I know that I need to start right here in this single crochet. Okay, now I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the other side and finish up sewing my front panels to the back panel at the shoulder seam. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this off camera, and I will meet you back here for our next step. After we're done sewing the shoulders together, we're going to leave our panels with the wrong side facing, and we're going to sew them on the sides here, so lengthwise. We want to leave an arm opening at the top here from the shoulder seam, and then we're going to seam it together. So I'm going to use the whip stitch again, and I'm going to go down this way, and you can either go all the way to the bottom or you can leave a slit here. I am going to leave a little slit on both sides. So since this is a sleeveless garment, we don't have to worry about a sleeve circumference matching the armhole opening. So for this size, I settled on 10 inches depth for my armhole. This is obviously customizable, so if you want it a little bit more airy, you can start further down, or you can make it smaller. So it is up to your preference. For 10 inches here, just so you know where I landed for rows, if you just measure with your tape measure here, you will see that this actually only gives me approximately 9 inches, and that is because I haven't blocked my panels yet. I'm going to block it at the very end, as I mentioned earlier. So this is where my gauge swatch is going to come handy. Again, based on my gauge swatch, in order to have 10 inches, I need 24 rows. So I went ahead and counted from the shoulder seam 24 rows down, and this is my 24th row from the top. So we're going to do that on both panels, and then we're going to pin them together, and this is where I'm going to start sewing down. Same thing here. I wanted to have about 7 inches from the bottom for my opening here, and in order to have 7 inches, I do have approximately 1/4 inch here in the first row without the counting the lace rows. So this first row of single crochet is approximately 1/4 inch, so I need approximately 6 3/4 inches. And again, if you do your calculations based on the gauge swatch, that gave me approximately 16 rows. So I counted 16 rows from the bottom, and I pinned them together at the 16th row on both sides. So now I'm going to sew the panels together in between these two markers. So I'm going to go ahead and attach my yarn here, and I'm going to whip stitch all the way up. And again, as you whip stitch, as you sew your panels together, make sure that your pattern lines up. If you have to, you could pin the panels together as you go up every few rows to make sure that they match. So we want the rows to line up. So the rows of these shells need to line up together, okay? So we want to make sure that our panels line up perfectly according to that lace stitch pattern. And I'm going to double knot this here just to make sure it doesn't come undone. And I can start with my whip stitch, and of course on the side here we don't have exact stitches. They're either chains or sides of double crochets there or single crochets. So you just have to use your best judgment in where to insert your needle when you sew these sides together. So just make sure that they're somewhat spread out evenly, and just go ahead and whip stitch all the way up. And again, just make sure that it's not so tight that it is curling and it's not too loose. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish this side, and then I'm going to finish the other side. Once we are done sewing the sides together, we are going to go ahead and weave in all of the tails that are left over. So we're going to go ahead and weave them in and hide them, and then we're going to be done with the main part of the pattern. We don't have an edging or anything built into this pattern because it already has a nice looking straight edge here, so we don't need to work an edge. So once we are done with weaving in the tails, we can go ahead and block. And after that, we will have one more step left, and that is going to be the drawstring. So we're going to work a cord that is going to act as a drawstring for the waistline. For the drawstring, we're going to be working a cord. There are different types of cords, and the one that I'm going to be showing you today is sometimes called double chain or half of an I cord. So we're going to need a very long tail, so we're going to use basically 2 strands of yarn. We're going to have a slip knot here, and we're going to use both of these strands, so the yarn tail is also going to be worked with. So we're going to need a super long tail. How are we going to know how long the tail needs to be? So first of all, you want to know how long you want your drawstring to be. So the size that I'm going to make today, I decided that a good length of the drawstring is going to be 60 inches. You can always take a tape measure and put it around your waist and see how long you want your drawstring to be. You can maybe even find a drawstring from a different clothing item that you have around the house and see how long that one is and see if that is a good length for you. Once we determine the length of the drawstring, so for this size here, it's going to be 60 inches. And 60 inches is a little over 150 centimeters, so let's say 5, so it's 152 centimeters. Okay, so once we know that, what we're going to do is we're going to pull our yarn from the main skein that we have, that we're using, and we're going to measure out 4 times the length of the drawstring that we want to make. Okay, so basically I'm just going to take my measuring tape, stretch out the yarn on the tape until I reach 60 inches. There we go. So now I'm going to need 4 more times this length. So I'm going to fold it here. There we go. Okay, so now I have 2. Fold again. Three times the length, fold again, 1 more time. Okay, 4 times the length. Okay, so at this point where our 4 times the length is, this is where we're going to make our slip knot right here. The rest of this yarn, so this super long tail, we're going to work with it as well. So make sure it stays nearby and that it doesn't get tangled. If you want to, you can wind it up into a tiny little ball, yarn ball here, from the end of it. Okay, so now at this point here where we figured is the 4 times the length of our drawstring, this is where we're going to create our slip knot. So I'm going to make a slip knot right here. Okay, so now we're going to be working with both strands. So one of these strands is that super long tail, right? And the other strand is still attached to our main skein. Okay, so the way we're going to work this, we're going to use yarn under and yarn over. We're going to use the long tail to yarn under, and we're going to use the working yarn, the one that is attached to the yarn skein, to yarn under. Okay, so this is my working yarn. I'm going to go ahead and tension it. Now this one is going to be used for yarn under. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to yarn under that long tail. So yarn under just means that yarn under the hook. So regularly when we work our chains or single crochets, a yarn goes over the hook right there, right? And in this case, we're going to work yarn under. So we're going to bring the hook from behind that tail and up, and this will give us a loop. So now we have 2 loops on the hook. Now we're going to yarn over our working yarn and pull through both loops on the hook. There we go. We're going to repeat the same thing. So we're going to yarn under that tail to make a loop. You can also pinch that little end of that cord that we just created to make sure it doesn't move and that your loops here are even. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. Okay, I'll show you one more time. So you're going to go yarn under, pinch that cord, make sure that your loops are even, yarn under and pull through both loops. Once you get a hang of it, it's going to go super fast. There we go. And you just keep going until you have the length of your cord. Again, make sure that you always tighten up your loops, that they are the same length. Here we go. All right, so let's work this until we have the length of the drawstring that we need. Okay, so here's my cord. I made 60 inches here, and as you can see, it is a nice and thick cord, and it is stronger and thicker than if you were to make a regular chain, and it is a little bit stretchy, so I do like this type of cord best for this type of things. So for drawstrings, or if you need bikini strings or things like that. All right, so once you've reached the length that you needed, you can go ahead and cut both ends. So I do have a little bit more left over here because I kept my tension really tight, but if you have normal tension, you may not have a tail that is this long. And we are going to work tassels at each end of the drawstring. So we're going to add some tassels here at the end. And I want to cut this a little bit longer. So I want to have longer tails here so I can blend them into my tassels. And I want the tassels to be approximately 5 inches long. So I'm going to measure out 6 to 7 inches because I want to have a little bit extra. I can always trim it later, but I want to have a little bit extra just in case. So we're going to go ahead and measure this out, and then we can go ahead and cut and pull through. Okay, so for the tassels, we're going to need to cut strands of yarn, and for a 5-inch tassel, I want to add an extra inch, so 6 inches, because I will be wrapping the tassels, you will see in a little bit, and we need a little bit of extra length, and then we do want to have some room for trimming. So we're going to add an extra inch just in case, so that's 6 inches, which is approximately 15 to 16 centimeters. And we're going to measure that out and then fold in half. So basically we need 12 inches, and then we can cut right there. So we're going to need these strands, 12-inch strands, and we're going to need a few of them. So how many you do depends on how thick you want your tassels to be. Okay, so I have 2. Three, 4. Okay, so I have 2 sets of strands here, and one set is 10 strands and the other set is 11 strands. We are going to be attaching these to the ends of the drawstrings, and one of the ends already has 2 tails, so that's basically that extra strand, 11th strand. So I just wanted to have them even, and this is why one of them only has 10 and the other one has 11. So the one with the 10 is going to go on this end, and the one with 11 strands is going to go on this end. I'm going to start on this end where we fastened off our drawstring, and we're going to grab our strands that we made and fold them in half around our index finger to form a loop. So fold in half, form a loop on your index finger. Now we're going to have to pull this loop through the end stitch here. It is pretty tight, as you can see. So this is where we're tied off, so we can still loosen it up. So I'm going to loosen up this very last stitch here, right there. Just enough to insert my hook through it. So I'm going to insert my hook through this one here. Right there. And then we're going to insert our hook through this loop on our index finger. Make sure it's folded in half still, and pull all these strands through the loop on our hook right here. Now we can tug on this and tighten it back up. Stretch that loop enough to where we can insert our thumb and index finger through the loop here. And then we're going to grab all these tails and pull them through this loop here, just like so. Okay, now we can tug and pull. Before you pull all the way and close that loop, you're going to bring your hook through again, and you're going to pull these ends as well. So we want to tuck these in as well into our tassel so that they're hidden. So I'm going to pull them through as well. Okay, so now we just have to tug all the way until we form a nice loop here. So keep pulling on both ends here. It will even out eventually. Just gotta pull nice and tight here. All right. And here we are. Okay, so now we're going to do the other end, and in the other end we did not tie off, so the stitch is going to be really tight. Going to want to go ahead and stretch the very first stitch here as much as we can and insert our hook, really stretch it out as much as you can. And we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to grab the other batch of strands there and fold it around our index finger and try to pull it through the stitch. Now, if you're like me and you made them too tight and you can't pull all of these strands through the stitch, we can try, but let's see if it works. Nope, see, not enough space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do them in 2 batches instead. So I'm going to do half and half. Split it in half and do them in 2 batches. Okay, do the same thing, fold in half, pull this batch through here, stretch out that loop, okay, set it aside, insert the hook through that loop again, grab the other batch, again fold it in half, right there, and pull the other batch through. Here we go. So now we just have to consolidate these 2 loops. So I want to have them together here. Here we go. Want to even them out. Here we go. So I have the same size loop now. There. Now I can insert my index and my thumb through it and pull all these tails through that loop, just like so. Okay, so now we want to tug on those tails. There we go, try to keep it even and tug until the loop closes around. And you can even it out by tugging on individual strands as well. Here we go. Now we have a really nice tight loop here. And my second tassel is finished. Okay, so now we have our 2 tassels here. And we can go ahead and trim them to the length that we need. Okay, so I'm going to measure out the 5 inches and start with one of them first. So approximately here is where I want to trim, right there. It doesn't have to be exact, so once you trim it, you can go ahead and flatten it out and see if it's pretty straight, right there. And if it still feels like it's too long, you can go ahead and trim it even more. So I think 5 inches is a little too long now that I see it. So maybe I will actually trim it a little bit more like 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. Yeah, I think 4 inches will look a little bit better. After I finish both of them, I'm going to actually go ahead and try to make sure that they're even on both sides. So I'm going to do the hairdresser thing with the fingers, and you can see they're not even, so I'm going to go ahead and trim the top here a little bit to even them out. Here we go, and I'm all done with my drawstring. You don't necessarily have to block your drawstring. This cord will retain its shape and stretchiness regardless. But if you have very uneven stitches, let's say this is the first time you tried this cord and it looks kind of uneven or too curly, you can definitely go ahead and block it. So you can get it all nice and wet and then stretch it out on your blocking mat to shape it. The very last step is going to be attaching the drawstring to our panels. We don't have to attach the drawstring, but I recommend attaching it just so you don't lose it. So we can do a couple of different things. We can either weave in the drawstring all the way around through the lace, or we can just weave it in at the very end only, just on the very edge right here so that we don't lose it, so it stays in here. Or we can weave it in all the way around. You want to make sure that you're on the same row all the way across. And if you do want to weave it in, what I recommend is that you make sure that you space it out at even intervals. So you're going to pick a row, let's say we're going to pick this row here, and we're going to weave it in and out this way. So let's say this is one of the spots it goes in. So then I want to make sure that I come out at the same level right here. Okay, and then the same level back in. Nice, and then the same level back out. And finish it off here. Once we complete this step, we are all done.